What's up, guys? It's Jesse here from Nat Apps, and today we're going to be talking about the championship landscape in the UFC in 2021 and how I think things are going to be able to change. So, running down the champions right now, we've got Francis Ngannou at heavyweight, light heavyweight is Jan Blachowicz, middleweight is Israel Adesanya, welterweight Kamaru Usman, lightweight currently vacant after Khabib vacated the title. Featherweight is Alexander Volkanovski, bantamweight is Aljamain Sterling, flyweight is Davison Figueiredo. And then in the women's divisions, we have featherweight and bantamweight both being held by Amanda Nunes, flyweight by Valentina Shevchenko, and strawweight by Rose Namajunas. So obviously, we'll start from the bottom, starting from the women's divisions, starting in the smaller divisions. So Rose Namajunas, obviously the current strawweight champion, just recently won her title with a head kick knockout over Weili Zhang. And yeah, I think right now there's a couple of different options for her. I think the two fights that need to be made, one is actually already currently booked, is the Carla Esparza versus Yan Xiaonan, the other top Chinese contender. I think the winner of that fight should get the next title shot. If it's Xiaonan, then she's on, I think, something like a 20-fight win streak. She's been just destroying girls. And if it's Esparza, that is the former champion who also has a win over Rose, so that would give her a chance to get that win back. Currently, I don't see anyone in the division beating Rose. She's just picked apart every girl. The one fight that she did lose was against Jessica Andrade. Andrade was actually getting her ass kicked that fight, and then Rose was on her back and she threw on her head. So Andrade is very powerful. And again, everyone has a puncher's chance, but outside of that puncher's chance, I just don't see Rose losing that strawweight strap. Rose is obviously very, very young. She's only 28 years old. She has that 10-4 record. She's already avenged one of her losses. Her other loss to Esparza, or she's avenged two of her losses, sorry, the Tisha Torres loss and the Jessica Andrade loss. Avenging the Esparza loss would be huge for her, and I don't think she'll ever be able to avenge that Carolina loss because I think Carolina will either be cut from the UFC or retire. So unless Rose somehow goes on like a massive downturn, I don't think she'll ever be able to fight Carolina again, unfortunately. Or maybe Carolina has a career resurgence. You never know. But yeah, being able to get that Esparza rematch would be huge for her. And Xiaonan being the next big thing in China, possibly another Chinese champion, I think that would be a big fight for the UFC. But either way, I do not see any of them beating the current Rose Namajunas. I think she's improved leaps and bounds since her Carla Esparza fight. I think in the Carla Esparza fight she was 22, maybe 23. I think if she won that fight, I'm pretty sure had she won that fight, she would have beat John Jones' record for the youngest champion ever. So Rose is a very good fighter, very, very good fighter, very underrated. Beat Joanna Jędrzejczyk twice, beat Andrade, and yeah, I don't see Rose losing that title in 2021. Moving on to flyweight, we've got Valentina Shevchenko, another one where I just don't see her losing that title in 2021. She's pretty much beat up all of the top contenders, either at 125 or some of them she fought previously at 135. I don't see anyone in 125 pounds defending or being able to fight against her. I think Lauren Murphy versus Joanne Calderwood is a fight that's coming up. I'd imagine the winner of that will probably get the next title shot, unless Rose is willing to move up. Maybe they'll do that fight, but I don't know if that'll happen because Rose is not even the biggest strawweight. She could honestly probably make atomweight if they had the division. But yeah, I don't see anyone at 125 pounds beating Shevchenko. I think the best option for her is to move up to 135 and try and go for that title if she really wants a challenge. Or she can just keep racking up those defenses, and if she's able to just dominate that division for years and years and years and, beat GSP or John Jones's records, Anderson Silva's record for consecutive title defenses, if she's able to do any of this, that would be highly impressive, and I think she has the talent to do it, and I don't see any other girls coming up that are going to be able to beat her. So yeah, I really don't see how that's going to work. Another good fight would be Nico Montano if she moved down. I know a lot of people don't really like Montano because she had the weight cut issues, and she didn't want to fight Shevchenko because she didn't feel that Shevchenko deserved it. And then especially with that looks really bad on her, especially with how dominant Shevchenko's been lately. Had Shevchenko lost, no one probably would have cared. But the fact that Shevchenko came down and won the title kind of makes Nico look like she was scared. But yeah, I think Nico Montano is 6-0 in the division, 3-0 professionally, and the 3-0 in exhibition during the Ultimate Fighter. So I think if Nico moved down, that'd probably be the best option, but I don't see that fight happening. And the weight issues are another thing. Nico's had problems making weight, so even if she did make it down and win the title, I don't know how much the UFC would want her staying there, because you don't know if like the next title fight she has, she's going to miss weight again. And then moving up to Amanda Nunes. At 145 pounds, they really need to start bringing in girls into these different divisions. Most of the top 145 pounders are literally just the top 135 pounders. A lot of those girls just keep jumping back and forth between those two classes. Unfortunately, I don't think Cyborg will ever be brought back into the UFC, which is very unfortunate, because even though I'm not a big Cyborg fan because of the steroids and other things, she has consistently been one of those top girls. And Amanda obviously blasted her, knocked her out, but I really don't see any other challenges for her at those divisions. I mean, she might be able to get another Holly Holm fight. I think she's only beat Holly once. Yeah, she's only fought Holly once, but like Jermaine Duran, she's already beat twice. Shevchenko, she's already beat twice. She's already beat Rousey, who's retired. Misha Tate, who's retired, but coming back now. Again, she's beat every girl that's ever held the 35 or 45 strap, and half of the girls that have held the 25 strap. The Shevchenko fight was probably her most recent fight that was even somewhat close, and that was, I think, her the split decision to Shevchenko was her second title defense. So at bantamweight. So if Shevchenko moves up, I think that's the fight to make. But with Shevchenko having already lost to her twice, I don't know if the UFC will be willing to do that. But then again, the second fight was so close that you could argue that it's the only person to give Nunes a challenge, and Shevchenko doesn't really have any fights at 35 or at 25. So I think that's the best option for her at 35 for her next defense. I think they actually have a fight booked for her at 35. Yeah, she's fighting Pena and at UFC 265. I don't see Pena beating. I really just don't see any of these girls beating her. The only girl I think that has a chance is if Shevchenko moves back up. Holly Holm probably has a good chance in a rematch. Obviously, the first fight was pretty short. Amanda blasted her with that head kick, but I think if Holly could go out there and point fight her, I don't think she has the power to put Amanda away, unless she lands that nasty head kick, which she could. I mean, that's talking about Holly Holm, national kickboxing champion, world boxing champion. But I think Holly has a good chance to go out there and outpoint fight her in a rematch, and that's about it. Just if Shevchenko, I can't see either of these girls losing except to maybe each other, right? That's the problem with Shevchenko and Nunes right now. I guess not really a problem, like the two top girls in the world, but if they were able to sell that what's it called, the third fight with Shevchenko, I think that would be the biggest fight for them to make at 135 pounds. And 45, I don't know. I guess you just give Holm another title shot. I don't know if she wants to move back up to 45. I know she's on a 2-win streak at 35 right now and a 1-win streak at 45. Because she lost the decision to Cyborg, then she beat Megan Anderson again at 45. Then she moved down to 35 for the bantamweight title shot and lost. Then she stayed there and beat two girls. So honestly, you could give Holly a title shot at 35 or 45. I think the best option is probably to do Holly at 45 and Shevchenko at 35 after the Pena fight. But again, I don't really see. She might be able to outpoint fight, but I don't see her like finishing her. So Holly Holm has a chance, but yeah, I'm gonna bet that Amanda Nunes is still the champion of both divisions by 2021. Now moving on to the boys. So we have Davison Figueiredo. He has his rematch with Brandon Moreno coming up. The last one was the decision draw. So Figueiredo is 33 and Moreno is 27. So I am going to go with Moreno winning this because the younger man almost never loses the rematch. It is very, very rare. So yeah, I just, nothing against Davidson. I think he is one of the best flyweights of all time. But I think Moreno is going to come back and win this UFC title. I imagine it'll be another decision. I don't think he's going to finish him. Figueiredo's just too good. Obviously, Marino is sorry. So yeah, obviously, Figueroa has a really high finish rate. So if he wins, it's more likely to be a finish. Marino doesn't have the highest finish rate. He does have a lot of submissions, not too many knockouts, quite a few decisions, which is to be expected at that weight class. But then again, Marino's never been finished, so I expect this will most likely go to a decision. And I'm gonna give the nod to Brandon Moreno because usually the younger guy wins in rematches. So, or the younger guy improves more, I should say, not necessarily wins, but the younger guy improves more. And if the younger guy is going to improve more on a draw, that means that the younger guy is going to win in this case. So I expect Brandon Moreno to be the 125-pound champion by the end of 2021, which would actually make him the first true Mexican champion because they've had Cain Velasquez and they've had Rico Rodriguez, and they've had a couple other guys. Tony Ferguson, I think, is part Mexican. Obviously, both the Shamrock brothers, but they've never had a born in Mexico Mexican. So I think if Brandon Moreno wins that title, that could be huge for the UFC in Mexico. And then obviously moving on to the 135-pound division, we have the Grammy Award-winning actor Aljamain Sterling. Or I guess Oscar. I think Grammys are for music. I don't know. I don't pay attention to that shit, but I'm pretty sure Grammys are for music. Oscars are for acting. So the Oscar award-winning actor, Aljamain Sterling. I imagine his next fight will be a rematch versus Peter Yan, but Peter Yan, but he's obviously been trying to duck that fight. It seems he's postponing it, keeps putting it off. Assuming that fight happens in 2021 and Aljamain doesn't hold on to the belt for like a year and a half, just fucking around. I just don't see him beating Peter. The skill gap was just too huge, and Jan is 3 years younger than him, right? So the younger guy was already far, far better than the older guy. And again, the younger guy rarely improves more than the older guy when a rematch happens. So the fact that Jan already just beat the absolute shit out of him, if it wasn't for that illegal knee, it would have been a very one-sided decision or possibly a finish without that illegal knee. I just don't see Aljamain holding the belt. And I think he'll go down as one of the worst champions in UFC history, even if he's not, just because people don't like how he got the belt. So the fact that he got it on that DQ, a lot of people are always going to look down on him for, which is understandable, but at the same time, that was a very smart move, but, probably a little cowardly, shows a lack of honor, but definitely intelligent. So then moving on to 145 pounds, we have Alexander Volkanovski, 22-1, coming off the double decisions against Holloway. Before that, he beat Jose Aldo. Before that, Chad Mendes. So he's just been on a tear through these top guys. His one loss was to Corey Nelson by TKO head kick and punches way back in May of 2013 in the Australian Fighting Championships. So, again, Volkanovski is another one of these guys that I really, really just don't see losing the title for a long time. His kickboxing is just too good. He actually did compete in amateur wrestling in growing up. He actually has a very, very different background. He grew up both doing wrestling, which although he was in Australia, which isn't exactly known for its wrestling program, but he did grow up wrestling. I think he was doing karate or something, boxing. Was just doing a bunch of different martial arts growing up, and so he has, from a very young age, a very diverse background in different martial arts. Professional boxing record of 1-0. So yeah, the dude's very high level in very different ways. He one of the best wrestlers in Australia. Even obviously it's Australia. It's not the mecca of the greatest wrestlers of all time, but being a top level Australian wrestler, and Australian National Schools Champion Wrestling Competition, he won the gold medal. So he was the national champion at 13 years old in 62 kilogram wrestling. And again, all these this jiu-jitsu's got probably one of the most well-diversified backgrounds from a young age in martial arts. And I actually don't think people talk about that enough. Like, you're talking about a guy that's been boxing since a very young age, doing karate since a very young age, and wrestling since a very young age. It's no surprise that this dude ended up being champion. And I don't see anyone beating him for quite a while. And yeah, I think Brian Ortega is his next match. Brian Ortega, obviously very, very good at jiu-jitsu. If it hits the ground, Ortega could submit him. But I'd be very surprised if Ortega is able to get it to the ground, because Volkanovski likes to stand, and he's got the wrestling advantage. That being said, if it does hit the ground, Ortega's got a really, really, really good chance, just because his jiu-jitsu is so high level. But I just don't see it hitting the ground, because I don't think Volkanovski's going to take him down, and I don't think Ortega's going to be able to take Volkanovski down. Next up, we got Kamaru Usman. I think that they've already announced the next fight is going to be the rematch against Colby Covington. I'm a big Colby fan. I like all the shit talking he does. I know a lot of people don't. I think it's fucking hilarious. I love how he just leans into it and just does not care. Just accepts that he's full heel. That being said, I don't see Covington winning this rematch. I'd be very surprised. Usman is 33. How old's Covington? Covington, again, 33, so the same age. I expect near the same level of improvement. The one thing that might give Covington the edge is that as a lot of these top-level wrestlers keep getting better and better and moving up the ranks, you notice a lot of them move away from the wrestling. And if you look at Usman's early career, he obviously knocked a bunch of guys out, choked a couple guys out, because he was so much better than them. But then once he got to the UFC, it was all decision wins, except for the Sergio Moraes fight, but basically just out wrestling guys for the most part, right? And then his most recent fights, he's been fighting grapplers who are able to keep it standing, for the most part. The exception being Jorge Masvidal, who's it's kind of weird because people consider him a striker, but he actually comes from a high school wrestling background. He was a high school wrestler turned street fighter. So he's, even though he does use his striking way more than his grappling, he actually does come from a grappling background, which is unfortunately true of a lot of these top guys. They get away from the grappling once they knock out a couple of low-tier guys, and then they start thinking that, oh, I'm a striker now. And it's like, no, dude, you're not. You just beat up some guy that really couldn't fight. And yeah, I think that might bite Kamaru in the ass eventually, if he keeps thinking he's a high level striker. But against a guy like Colby Covington, a guy who probably arguably has a similar problem, who kind of has turned away from wrestling in his most recent fights, I don't know. I think Usman wins that probably, unfortunately, and keeps on keeping on. Next up, we've got Israel Adesanya. So Izzy is he just moved up, tried to attempt to beat Blachowicz, wasn't able to do it, and then now he's moving down and having the rematch versus Marvin Vettori. Marvin is 27 and Izzy is 31. So there's another one where I'm actually really interested to see what happens, because usually the younger guy improves more, right? And Vettori being, I think, 3 years younger than Izzy, you would expect that Vettori would improve more. But if we look at their records, they really debatably haven't, right? Like, since they fought each other, neither guy has lost. But in that time, I guess Israel has lost when he moved up division. Neither's lost at 185 pounds, I should say. But if we look at it in that time, Vettori was only able to get 5 wins, one of them by finish. Whereas if we look at Israel Adesanya, in that time, Izzy was able to get 6 wins, 3 of them by finish, and in that time, win the interim title, unify the title, and then beat 2 top contenders. So normally I give the edge on a rematch to the younger guy almost always, but I just don't think Vettori has shown us over his last couple of performances that he's increased to the same degree that Israel Adesanya is. I think he has improved. I think he is a better fighter than he was in their original fight. But I don't think he's improved as much as Izzy has. Izzy won the title, defended the title twice, won the title, unified with the official title, defended it twice, and then moved up and lost a somewhat close decision. The takedowns are really the only big difference. When they were standing, it was a close fight. Jan was just smarter when it came to those takedowns. And yeah, so I think Israel becomes the exception to the normal rule, or one of the few exceptions, and ends up winning the rematch of Vettori. Probably finishes him. He's just so damn slick on his feet. Next up, we have Jan Blachowicz. So Jan is in a weird position. He is currently the 205 champion because the 205 champion moved to heavyweight. I don't see Jones coming back down. It looks like he's really, really focused on gaining that weight, and he's starting to look really, really big, and I don't think he's going to be able to get back down unless he ended up doing some like crazy camp where he's just all doing cardio. But I really just don't see Jones beating I just don't see Jones coming back down after he moves to heavyweight. I think that's going to be a permanent move for him, which means that Blachowicz is now the top guy at 205, probably for a good foreseeable amount of the future. He won the title against Dominic Reyes, TKO punches, second round. Then he defended against Izzy Adesanya in a fairly close match, although the takedowns did make it obvious who won, but in the stand-up it was pretty close. But then again, Izzy's no slouch either. He's the champ below, probably, in my opinion, the second best middleweight of all time, just behind Anderson. So the fact that he was able to beat him, even though he is 20 pounds smaller, is quite impressive. Blachowicz is fighting Glover Teixeira at UFC 266, and Blachowicz is 38. I think Teixeira he was probably in his early 40s. Yeah, 41. So Teixeira is 41. Teixeira's been kind of on a career resurgence lately. He was just absolutely destroying everyone before he lost to John Jones. Then he lost to Phil Davis. Then he won 3 in a row, got knocked out by Anthony Johnson, won 1, got knocked out by Alexander Gustafsson, won 1, got lost the decision to Corey Anderson, and then he's won 5. So he's kind of been on this career resurgence where he's come back for a title, and Glover has just been one of those top guys that just will not go away. He's been here forever. He's 32-7. All of his losses are pretty much the top guys, except for his first loss ever. Even Ed Herman, who he fought in his 4th fight, ended up moving on after that to become another UFC fighter. And then John Jones, Phil Davis, Anthony Johnson, Gustafsson, Corey Anderson. All these guys are either top contenders or literal former champions. So none of those losses are really that bad, I guess you could say. He's lost to top tier guys. But yeah, him versus Blachowicz is an interesting fight. I'm probably gonna give the slight edge to Glover, but I'm not 100% confident on that because Blachowicz is obviously the younger guy, only by 3 years, but that does matter a little bit. And yeah, there's similar opponents against each other. Alexander Gustafsson and Corey Anderson. They have similar outcomes. Gustafsson got the decision over Blachowicz, whereas he finished Glover. In the rematch, Blachowicz knocked out Corey Anderson, which was the one that gave him his title shot. This is honestly probably the closest fight I think we have this year for a title fight. I am really interested to see this one. I honestly, this is like a 50-50 for me. This is one of the closest title matches we have of the year. I think light heavyweight's in a weird spot right now. Anthony Johnson, it looks like he signed with Bellator for heavyweight. Gustafsson might be retired again. I'm not really sure, or he might move back down. DC's retired. John Jones moved up. So a lot of the top guys are retiring or moving up weight classes, or in the case of Johnson, going to another organization after his last fight was his loss to DC. Let me double check that. Who did Anthony Johnson fight last? Yeah, so his last was the loss to DC 4 years ago now. So yeah, a lot of those top guys at that division are just, they're either, moved on to other organizations, moved up weight classes, so yeah, like light heavyweight's in a really weird spot right now. So yeah, I think Blachowicz has a chance to make a good run on it. Glover has a chance to make a good run on it. And yeah, I'm kind of hoping Blachowicz, however you pronounce it. I've heard it pronounced both ways, and I'm still not sure how to pronounce it. I gotta listen to an interview with the guy and hear him pronounce it himself. But yeah, Blachowicz, if he's able to get a good streak together, he's already obviously won the title, beat Izzy. If he's able to get 2 or 3 more title defenses, I think that would be insanely impressive, and move him up into that position of being one of those top 5 light heavyweights of all time. He's a good chance of making a run at that. And I think this Teixeira fight is the fight that is the make or break for me. Unless Gustafsson comes back, then I think Gustafsson's probably going to beat him again. But yeah, with Gustafsson and Jones fighting at heavyweight, with DC retired, with Anthony Johnson gone to fucking Bellator, I don't see who anyone except maybe Glover in a close decision beats him, and that could let him go on one of these runs. And like right now for me, I have John Jones as the number 1 light heavyweight of all time, Tito Ortiz number 2, and a lot of people are going to hate that because they want Chuck as number 2, but I think Tito's run as the champion is more impressive, and then his run afterwards, including his defeat over Chuck much later, more recently, he had the overall better career. Number 3, I'd put Chuck Liddell. Number 4, I would put Frank Shamrock. And then number 5, I would put DC. And I think if Blachowicz can get 2 or 3 title defenses and at least match Cormier in those amount of title wins, if he's able to at least match him, I think you could make an argument that he's the guy. Especially because when DC was the champion, you could argue he was only the champion because John Jones wasn't there. And I guess you could argue the same thing for Jan, except the big difference is John Jones not being able to fight versus John Jones moving up a weight class and not being small enough to fight. That means that while DC was the champion, John Jones was technically the strongest, best 205-pounder in the world. But while Jan was the champion, John Jones wasn't a 205-pounder, so Jan is the best 205-pounder in the world. Yeah, and then obviously, last but not least, before we talk about the vacant title, the last champion currently is Francis Ngannou. It looks like they're going to do Derek Lewis versus Ngannou 2. It looks, after that, they might do the Stipe or Jones match. Ngannou has a lot of really good fights, and Ngannou is interesting. 34 years old. Obviously, the Derek Lewis fight coming up. Derek is 36 years old, a little bit older. I expect, Ngannou showed great improvements in his last fight. Great takedown defense, a little bit sharper boxing. He did make one big mistake, in my opinion, and ironically, it actually got him the finish. Stipe cracked him, and he stepped in instead of stepping back. And because Stipe also made a mistake and decided to get really aggressive and go for the finish, instead of sitting back like he did the first fight and outpointing him, when Stipe got too aggressive and then Francis decided to counter with aggression, both their mistakes, but Francis ended up winning the mistake exchange. I guess you could call it the bad decision exchange. So yeah, I think Francis has improved a lot more, but he's still, to a large degree, willing to exchange because he knows he's going to get that power off. And to be fair, he's only lost decisions, so he's never been knocked out. It's hard to say that anyone could put him out. That being said, Derek won the first fight. Not much happened, but he did win. I think right now Ngannou's in a weird position. If he can beat Derek, especially if he knocks Derek out, and then if he can win the Stipe rematch, and then especially if John Jones moves up and he wins that fight, or well, Jones has already moved up, but when that fight happens, if he wins that fight, if he wins all 3 of those fights, I don't see anyone at 265 pounds beating him. Derek's the other guy that's got that kind of power The only other guy that's got the same kind of power he has, Stipe is, in my opinion, the greatest heavyweight of all time. Just completely outworked him in the first fight, made a mistake and paid for it in the second fight. Although Francis did show much improved wrestling, takedown defense. And then John Jones obviously being the greatest fighter of all time, greatest light heavyweight of all time. If Ngannou can get through all three of those, I think Ngannou goes on to be the new heavyweight GOAT and overtake Stipe and Couture and Fedor and all those top heavyweights. But he's got to get through those guys. He's got to win that trilogy with Stipe, which obviously the rematch will be coming up soon. He's got to get through Jones, with Jones moving out, and he's got to get through his next fight, which is Derek Lewis. I think Stipe wins this rematch. Stipe has improved leaps and bounds. Derek Lewis is largely the same fighter he's always been, just raw power, likes to bang, knows he can beat you. Francis seems to actually be trying to learn to be the world champion. I saw him like throwing wheel kicks and shit the other day on Instagram. Like, I think Francis is probably just going to walk through Derek Lewis. But who knows? Maybe Derek will prove me wrong. I would love to have Derek as champion. Derek as champion would be one of the funniest fucking things ever to happen. His amazing fucking interview when he was like, Trump told me to knock this Russian motherfucker out. USA in this hoe. If you get that guy on the mic, he will be a massive superstar in the States. Like, so huge, because he'll have all of Black America behind him, right? Big fucking black, scary looking heavyweight. He'll have all of fucking a large chunk of white America behind him because he's fucking very patriotic, pro-Trump. Like, he could be that superstar heavyweight that really breaks down the color barrier and gets all the Americans behind him just because of his political views, his humor, how devastating he is. He's got everything to be a great American heavyweight champion. But I don't think he's going to beat Ngannou in the rematch. And then, obviously for the 155-pound title, the current vacant title with Khabib being leaving, we've got Oliveira versus Chandler. Very, very good matchup. I think Chandler is currently on a 3-fight win streak. Just beat Dan Hooker in his UFC debut. Before that, beat Benson Henderson and Sidney Outlaw in Bellator. Lost the Bellator lightweight championship back in May of 2019. So, I think the UFC wants Chandler to lose because, it would really look bad if this guy just lost the title in Bellator and then came over here and, won the title. But that being said, with Khabib gone, it's not that big of a deal. But he is fighting Oliveira. This is going to be an interesting fight because Oliveira is so damn good on the ground. He's so sneaky on the ground. But Chandler likes to stand up. Chandler, I think he comes from a wrestling background. But he does come from a wrestling background. But he's always been known for being one of those guys that just likes to stand and bang. He's got 10 wins by knockout and 7 by submission. So only 5 decisions. He's not known as like one of those wrestlers that likes to wrestle fuck people. He is a stand and bang kind of guy, and that is both good and bad. That is good because he's not going to go to the ground with Oliveira and get submitted, at least not willingly. And I imagine if Oliveira wants to get him to the ground, he's probably going to have to knock him down, which he could do. Oliveira, I think he does have a couple knockouts. He's at a KO by slam, a couple TKO KOs by punches and knees. So his ground game is his fucking bread and butter, right? Once it hits the ground, he is trouble. But I don't think he's going to be able to get Chandler to the ground unless he knocks him down, because I don't think Chandler's going to take him down. The big other thing, though, is I think Oliveira has a big reach advantage. He's got a 6'2" reach. And what's Chandler's? Yeah, Chandler's got a 5'11" reach. So it's not that big. It's only a 3-inch reach advantage, 2-inch height advantage, 3-inch reach advantage. Chandler's definitely the quicker, more explosive, athletic guy. Oliveira's kind of got like that slender, skinny boy build to him. So, that fight, that'll be an interesting fight. I think Michael Chandler will probably win it and break the UFC's heart, because then they'll have a champion that just lost his title in Bellator before winning the title in the UFC. But then again, if Khabib comes back, I think Khabib just smashes them all. Khabib's the best lightweight of all time, in my opinion. I think Chandler probably wins that one, and then he'll maybe be the champion by the end of the year. It depends if they give him a title shot, or if they have if they give him a title to defend against. The winner of Poirier versus McGregor will probably get that fight, and depending on, honestly, Poirier versus Chandler I think would be a close fight, because they're similar size. They kind of have, in a way, similar styles. Not too similar, but like they do a lot of things similar. Conor, I think, would just light Chandler up. I think he's a problem for Chandler. Chandler tends to get wild, and those tend to be the perfect guys for Conor to fight, because he takes advantage of that. Like you saw that in the Eddie Alvarez fight and the Jose Aldo fight. Another big thing, I think it depends if we get boxing Conor or karate Conor. Conor, after he went and fought Floyd Mayweather, decided that he wasn't a karate fighter anymore and that he was a boxer now, and stopped using his kicks to feint and set up all his knockout punches, which has really hurt him in his recent fights. So if we see old karate Conor, I think he beats both Poirier and either Oliveira or Chandler, whoever wins that fight. I'm leaning on Chandler. If we see Poirier win that fight, then so I guess it depends. I think if McGregor beats Poirier, McGregor is champion at the end of the year. If Poirier beats McGregor, there's a 50-50 chance it's either guy. I think it really just depends on which Conor McGregor we get back. But that'll be an interesting fight. And then, so for a bonus kind of fight, I'm going to kind of break down my thoughts on Francis Ngannou versus John Jones. So obviously we were talking about this earlier. John Jones is moving up to light heavyweight, moving up to heavyweight, wants to fight for the title, wants X amount of millions of dollars. I think it's a horrible fight for him for multiple reasons. If you look at all Jones's terrible fights, there's two ways to look at his career since the Sonnen fight. One is everyone he's fought since then has a reach much closer to his. So that could be the reason why these fights have been closer. Which means that he has problems with guys with reach close to his, which means he's going to have problems at heavyweight. The other thing is his toe got fucked up in that Sonnen fight, and maybe that's why he's never been the same. Maybe it's not the reach advantage or the lack therefore of, that's been messing him up in these last couple fights. But maybe it's just that the toe never fully recovered. He never had that explosive drive off his feet anymore. But either way, we know either John Jones had an injury that has permanently hindered his career to a point where he has never been the same fighter, or we know that John Jones has a problem against guys with long reach. And what that says to me is that John Jones is going to get fucking absolutely smashed versus Ngannou. I think Ngannou is just too damn big. And I know there's kind of this myth around John Jones being this high IQ fighter, but he really isn't. If you look at the first Gustafsson fight compared to the second Gustafsson fight, in the first Gustafsson fight, I think he only attempted 4 takedowns. And none of them were when Gus was tired. They were all at the start of the fight, right? And the entire time he tried outstriking a Swedish national boxing champion. And most people thought he lost that fight. A good chunk of people thought he lost that fight because Gus was able to hold off the couple of takedowns he tried early. Jones never tried any again. And then he got outboxed by a Swedish national boxing champion. He did land a couple of good shots. He had a good high kick at one point. I think he had a good spinning back elbow, a good knee. But for the most part, he was getting lit up. The second fight, which I assume was Greg Jackson telling him, yo, take this fucking guy down, quit being an idiot. He went out there, tried taking him down a couple times. Gus was able to, hold them off. Struck with him. Once Gus got a little tired, took him down, smashed him out. So I don't think that Jones has this high fight IQ that everyone says he does. I think his coaches do. Greg Jackson, one of the best coaches in the world. I think Jones is a freakishly athletic guy with a huge reach advantage and a weird frame that makes him a killer at light heavyweight. I do not think it was ever his fight IQ that got him there, and I think it's weird that people attribute that to the guy who is known for making horrible decisions and has this weird freak body that is like perfectly designed for fighting at 205 pounds, and is known for this elite athleticism, comes from this family full of NFL players. And we're like, you know what got him here? His brain, right? It's like, yes, this guy that makes bad decisions and is the most elite athlete ever at 205 is here because he's intelligent. No, he's here because he's a freak of nature athlete with a really good coaching system behind him. And I don't think that's going to matter when he's fighting Ngannou. He's just going to get blasted into the next dimension. But yeah, that's how I see these fights coming up. I think most champions will be the same. Blachowicz might lose to Teixeira. And Amanda has a chance to lose both her titles if Shevchenko moves up and if she fights Holly Holm and Holmes plays it smart and point fights. Lightweight's obviously way up in the air right now, and welterweight I don't see changing much. Most classes I just don't see changing much over the next year, except maybe light heavy. Obviously, lightweight will get a new champion, and that's about it. Like, comment, subscribe, and we'll